about that as well. Secretary Miller, thank you for coming. We appreciate it very much.
It's always good to be with you, Bill.
You're also working on a book, and we'll talk a bit about that as well. We've just heard the governor's budget director justify putting right to work and prevailing wage issues into the budget bill. I take it you oppose both his stand and mixing that into the budget bill.
Yeah, and I think the way that it was mixed in was pretty irresponsible. That a lot of the assumptions that were made for balancing the budget depend on that legislation passing, which both Democrats and Republicans appear to believe won't happen, and so that will leave our legislators an extra burden to try to come up with the revenue to pay for the important programs. I mean, ultimately, we all agree on the same goal, which is we want to promote economic development in the state and help bring the average incomes up in the state and have a greater prosperity for all of us. But you know, we believe people. Not only Democrats, but I think most Kentuckians believe that the way of doing that is to promote our education system, to not only the primary and secondary, but to help our higher education, and that's not being done in this budget.
Well, the governor says this is about economic development, introducing these labor issues, and Brad Cowgill has said that that's why it's in the budget, that it has financial implications for the state, that companies won't locate here if they think the state is overly friendly to unions. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the data is pretty clear that if you look at this whole right to work, they call it experiment for the last several decades, that that isn't true, that businesses are really looking for the type of things that Kentucky can offer if we can promote our education system. And I think what Lee Todd did at UK and what some of the other university presidents are doing by laying out this business plan is exactly what we need to do. We need to have a higher educated workforce. When you have that higher educated workforce, then the new industries of the 21st century are going to come. And, you know, we're not just competing with the states next to us, we're competing with India and China and Japan. And to do that, we've got to get our young people ready for this new economy. Lee Todd put together a business plan, and it pretty much was ignored in the governor's budget. And I'm very confident and hopeful that the House leaders will take another look at that and have a much higher priority for education.
On this one issue, though, with the union, what do you say to someone who says Kentuckians should have the right to join or not to join a union, regardless of what the situation in the workplace is?
Well, they do, but the point is that this right-to-work legislation is aimed not just at weakening unions. The whole message here is that we want to lower the wages of blue-collar employees as a way to help promote economic development, and that's not the way of going about it. We need to increase folks' wages. I mean, that's both the right to work and the prevailing wage issue here, and we need to be figuring out ways that we can lift all of us up as opposed to trying to pin the blame for our economic problems on one segment of the workforce. And if we can do that through education and through tax incentives and through other economic development initiatives, that's the best way that we can promote the economy here, not by trying to reduce the hourly wages of our working people.
When you say education, obviously you feel that education was not the priority you would have made it in a state budget, or would like to see it be. You've mentioned UK. Are there other facets of the budget that you don't like in that regard?
Well, I mean, higher education in general is woefully underfunded, as it has been over the past several years. I mean, we made a commitment several years ago in passing that House Bill 1, post-secondary education, that we wanted UK to be a top 20 school, that we wanted to lift up the rest of the state in that regard, and the money has not been put where our mouths have been over the last couple of years. And in order for us to have the kind of economic development, to have the kind of society we want, we've got to match that with resources, and until we do, we're going to continue to tread water, and the people paying the price are our students. If the current budget passes, we're going to get another double-digit tuition raise at UK and probably at all the other colleges around, and those kinds of things continue to hurt the people that need it the most.
You have some legislation that you're pushing this session regarding military families. What is that about?
Well, we have a conflict right now that is different from any other conflict that the nation has seen in two regards. First of all, We have a higher number of National Guard and Reserve troops overseas. About half of the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan are National Guard or Reserve. Half of them, of the troops that have died, have been National Guard and Reserves. These are people that have left their jobs, sometimes left their small businesses, and their families take a big hit to the quality of life back home while they're serving our country. Additionally, we've got a whole new class of financial predators that are targeting our military because these are young men and women that are financially unsophisticated, and they have a steady stream of income from which to poach and an honor and duty to pay back their debts. And so we see these scams like insurance policies where there's a combat exclusion hidden, so if they go overseas and die for their country, they get nothing. Or payday lending schemes that would make Tony Soprano blush, interest rates of 1,000% and more. And we've developed this Military Family Bill of Rights to help give a safety net for our military families. And
now, would you stop those kinds of policies, or would you just make sure they're not hidden in fine print?
We have like 12 or 13 different bills being introduced right now, and some of this legislation would help regulate policies, would reduce the interest rate that can be charged not only to our military families but to regular customers in these payday lending schemes. And so we're trying to use both the carrot and the stick, help provide education and information to our military families, and also use regulation to crack down on some of the excesses. And one of the things that really pleases me most, Bill, is that although this legislative session has seemed to start on a partisan note, the military family legislation is very bipartisan. And just yesterday, Senator David Williams, Senate President David Williams, he and I have not agreed on a lot of things over the last several years, but he has introduced as Senate Bill number 2 a Military Family Assistance Fund, which is at the heart of our Military Family Bill of Rights. And so to see the Republican leadership of the Senate join House members like Mike Weaver, who have been fighting for this, is very encouraging, and I'm very optimistic to see this legislation pass.
What else would you like to see the legislature do in this session? And specifically, let me ask you, do you support that? You sit on the lottery board, I know. Do you support the idea of expanded gaming in the state? I
definitely think that we should have a vote, and that I like the idea that with the vote would come a very detailed plan. The one thing that bothers me about expanded gaming, most of all, is the fact that the studies show that people that tend to go to the casinos and have to be lower income families, and so in that regard it becomes more of a tax, a regressive tax. And so I would like to see, as part of the plan, some sort of relief, whether it's service providing or whether it's a tax relief for lower and lower middle income families, to balance out the fact that they would be paying most of the revenue in such a situation. But the most important thing is, let's have a very open process. Let's not do this behind the scenes. I think the Lottery Commission is probably the best place to regulate it, because we've got a strong staff that's been doing this for over a decade. But let the people decide, and ultimately the people can have the choice on where they want their resources to go.
You are writing a book, and as I understand it, pretty much as this program goes on the air today, you expect to be putting the final period on the sentences, right, and finally getting that done. And it's about what? Faith and politics and values and that sort of thing. How's the book going?
It's been probably the most fulfilling and exciting project I've ever worked on, and it'll be published by St. Martin's Press, which is a national publishing house, in September, and it is a relief to be done with most of the writing of it, so I can concentrate on other things. But it's a very important subject. It's something that's hot on the debate, and something that I feel very strongly about.
With that as some context, I'm interested and curious about your thoughts about the intelligent design debate being brought forward by Governor Fletcher in his State of the Commonwealth address.
Well, I'm a person of strong faith. I believe from the bottom of my heart that God did create the heaven and the earth, and we teach our daughters that. I'm a Sunday school teacher. We teach that to the students, and I see no problem with having some sort of comparative religion course in the schools to educate our students about all the different wonderful religious traditions of our country and our world. But when my kids go to science class, I want their science teachers to teach them science. I don't want them to teach them religion. That's my job, and so I think that we should focus our attention on teaching them science in their science classes.
When those two may be in conflict, then what, is it up to the child, you think, or?
Well, it's up to the parent to substitute. One of the things that I propose in my book is that I think when a school district is going to teach evolution, for example, in the science class, they should let the parents know, so the parents can, in their homes or in their churches or synagogues, talk to them about the creation theory as a supplement. But again, science is science, and let's focus on the science and science class.
You can't run again for treasurer in 2007. It is unclear which slots may be open if you want to continue in public life. There are those who think, you know, that Jonathan Miller needs a public office to in order to live and breathe, and you're telling me that's not necessarily the case.
You know, I've had just the most wonderful 6 years as state treasurer. I've enjoyed the travel, meeting the people, the policy, but I'm someone who is fulfilled by my faith and by my family, and if politics is not in my future, I'm sure I can find some other things, but that doesn't rule anything out. We're still going to, you know, wait to see what happens in this session and to figure out. I think by the summer people are going to have to determine what offices they're going to run for or not run for, but I don't need to be in politics to be fulfilled, but I can tell you I do need to be involved in community service, and that's something that my book talks about, that the whole traditions of all of our great religions are compassion for others, and I think that each of us needs to do something to help our communities.
A few seconds left. You've been elected statewide twice. Would you run for governor if you thought it was a winnable race?
You know, that comes down to not only electability issues, but also more personal issues. My daughters are still quite young, and I want to be able to spend the time with them while they want to spend the time with me. They're going to be teenagers soon, and they're probably going to want to have Dad out of the house.
May not be as cool, huh?
Right? But so that's the most important consideration, and my family and I will make that decision when the time comes.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you, State Treasurer Jonathan Miller. We're back with Reed Polk's comment on Kentucky Newsmakers in just a moment.